welcome to the Buzzcast early edition today. So those of you in the chat room, good on you for paying attention. All right, Russ, what's going on?
I'm going to bring up some baseball. So interesting thing happened yesterday. The Mets signed a oft injured pitcher, Luis Severino, to like a 1-year deal for $13 million. He really hasn't thrown over 100 innings since. Well, he did 2 years ago. He threw 102, but really a standard for today's pitchers, if you want him to be, in the rotation, should be around 150 to 180. He hasn't thrown that since like 2019, and so they get him for 1 year, $13 million, and I'm like, I just don't believe that they're doing this. So then afterwards, they got rid of one of their popular middle infielder utility guys a couple of weeks ago, and they get like a guy now that's really so nondescript and 33 years old that it doesn't make sense. So, right now, even with the money that the Mets have, they have a GM that's never had money to spend. And so far he is sort of acting like a GM that will spend money when he feels like it, but otherwise wants to kind of show that, he's smarter than you and me and everybody else. And these things are going to work out and he's going to be a genius. But he doesn't realize that New York's not the place to do that. And the Mets fan base is probably not the right place to try that out, because they do have the money and they shouldn't have to take gambles on injured or older players. And yet so far that's what they've done.
And the worst thing that you could do if you're a Met, especially a new Mets GM, is to go out and get a former Yankee and a former Yankee that no Yankee fan wanted back, right? Because the guy has been injured off and on. Well, 4 or 5 years ago, people thought that Luis Severino was going to be the ace of their staff, and he's had consistent injury problems. And last year was one of the main contributors to their downfall because of the lack of availability, and he was just a gas can. And they spent $13 million on him, and I'm like, okay, that's that. I mean, my brother is a Cardinal fan, and the Cardinals went out and signed Sonny Gray, who's a good pitcher who pitches well in smaller markets, and Lance Lynn. But at least Lance Lynn is like an innings eater type of guy.
Right. He'll throw the 180 innings.
Right. And that the problem is that you don't know if best case scenario, Severino stays healthy, pitches 150 innings, and is a good third starter in the rotation. But the likelihood of that is about the likelihood again of the Leafs winning the Stanley Cup, which is not likely.
Yeah. So it's interesting times, because, this is the first impression, other than just clearing out some other talent, that the new, he's not a GM. He's not going to hire a GM. So the new baseball operations guy can kind of show the fan base, and, right now, not good, but that's it.
Yeah. Not good at all. All right, let's go with today's date, guys.
Oh, is this a cooperative effort now on the date?
No, it's still November. All right, ready? Here we go. Hockey World is Thursday, November 30th, 2023.
I'm Michael Agello, and for Christmas, I'm going to buy a calendar.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. I think tomorrow is December.
Tomorrow is December. That's right. Well, excellent. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you once in a while, depending on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we're happy to have you all here. We're going to do some rumors today, too. But what should we start with here?
Patrick Kane. We should start with Kane.
Yeah, Kane.
I've been on the air since the Patrick Kane thing happened and the Corey Perry thing as well. So we got a couple little things we can discuss there, too. So Patrick Kane signing with the Red Wings. I'm surprised on this one. I was surprised on this one. I honestly was. It was a 1-year deal. I thought he could maybe get 2 years from somebody else.
We all thought he could possibly get 2, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, 1-year deal. Now he it's interesting. Obviously, gets to go play with one of his old buddies from Chicago there. To bring Cat, which is going to be interesting. But I think. This is a very un-Steve Yzerman thing to do. I'd love to have Kevin on to discuss this at some point with him, but I was really surprised by this. You guys?
Well, okay. The one thing I was surprised at, and I don't think we can be surprised about it anymore, is what Detroit has done since July. Because clearly there was either impetus from the Ilitches or from Yzerman himself to sort of crapper get off the pot because the slow rebuild. I mean, they've signed Kopp, they've signed Comfer, they've traded for DeBrincat, now they've signed Kane. There's definitely a motivation here that you need to make the playoffs, or you need to be at least consequential this year. And I think they're consequential. I just don't know whether they're good enough, Russ. I mean, we're questioning I think their defense is better, even though they have Justin Hall, the most overrated defenseman in the NHL. But their goaltending is substandard.
Yeah, so it's two things. So now with Patrick Kane, they won't be in last. So I'll be wrong on that prediction. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it. But I still don't think they're making the playoffs because they still can't stop the puck, like Mike said, and their defense is still suspect. I watched them in that Ranger game, and I thought they played a pretty good game for 2 periods.
Yeah.
Then in the third period, that game started to change, and it started to change because their defense was just running out of gas because the top 4 gets played a lot and, the bottom pairing's not good, and the Rangers roll a good 4 line. So Laviolette kind of wore them out, wore them down, and I think that's going to be their problem. Now, somebody might say, hey, they'll go out and get a defenseman at the deadline. Yeah, okay, but I don't think Steve Yzerman's parting with any of his big assets to do that. So they're going to get somebody just, like a middling guy who's just going to kind of be a fill-in. So I think I think the one thing I got exactly right with Patrick Kane was he was looking for money, and this was the most money he could get.
Yeah. I mean, and it could turn out to be a great signing. He says he's going to just need a couple practices, and he's going to be back in the ice.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the lead up to this, I mean, he had displayed in the video that he circulated, I think it was in mid-October, that he was close to being ready. And, it's the 1st of December tomorrow. So you would think that he just needs to get his cardio up a little bit to start playing. The question is, what Patrick Kane are we going to see? Is it closer to the Patrick Kane from 2021, who I think he had 90, or 2022 that had like 90 points, or last year where the best game that he had was right before he was traded when he scored a hat trick. I think it was against Toronto, actually. And then with the Rangers, he was sort of okay. You could see that he was being limited by something. If he's close to being the guy from the previous year, then it's a coup for Detroit. But I think it's going to take a while for him to ramp up to that.
Yeah, the chat room's telling me that Detroit was down a defenseman. The defenseman they're down is Petrie, who's old and not very good anyhow.
Yeah,
like that Petrie Sherratt. How's that pairing going to look late in the season? I don't think it's going to look good. And having Ole Mata in is never good. But the other thing is, and this is something that now all the other players on Detroit are going to have to deal with. So yesterday, Patrick Kane, oddly enough, where does he take his first skate? MSG, right?
Yeah,
he has to do it. He's definitely going to be in the spotlight. He gets the interview on national TV, and he's not even playing. So now all the focus shifts to Patrick Kane on this team. All the focus.
Yeah.
And if he's playing great, it's going to be great. If he's playing like he played on the Rangers, it's not going to be great. And we don't know where it's going to be. But I'm just saying he will get all the focus for like the next month.
He's a huge media magnet, and he's going to bring and that could be good for some younger players. Maybe have the pressure off them a little bit. Like Sider and guys like this who've had to talk to the media will have to talk to them less now. He does have a good work ethic around the rink. I think that's always good to bring around young players. I think Eichmann's thinking that partially. It's like, okay, we're going to bring in a guy who is, who's going to be good around young players. I think, I'm looking forward to seeing how it works out. I am still kind of shocked by the fact that, we obviously don't have the issue anymore where you can't go to a team that you hated, because Chicago-Detroit rivalry is obviously enormous. And to go from Chicago to the Red Wings is kind of to Chicago fans. Are Chicago fans feeling today? Are they feeling any bit of a shot in the dark there?
I think it's been there, done that, because I think had he gone directly from the Blackhawks as a free agent to Detroit, then I think it would have been more of a stab in the back. But he was traded. They got something for him. He clearly the Blackhawks want to move on from the Taves, Kane, Keefe era for a number of reasons. And I don't think that there's really, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what the reaction is when he comes back in red and white when they play at the United Center. I mean, I don't know when that is. I haven't looked at the schedule.
Yeah.
I don't think it really rings any bells.
I do want to also applaud the chat room because David's like, hey, it was Shea Gostisbehere too that was out, who's our second best defenseman. If Shea, and I understand his point levels, I do, and I understand the points that he got in Arizona, and I've watched him this year. But if he's your second best defenseman going down the stretch and you need big games out of him defensively in the third period, good luck.
Yeah, you're not going to get defensive games. That's not his job. And, and he doesn't play well when put into that position, in that role.
He hasn't had any pressure on him in 2 years.
Yeah, you keep him out of that role and he's going to be fine. But, that's not a role you want to see him in at all. I guess we should discuss the Corey Perry thing a little bit. I mean, there's not much that goes on that really hasn't been talked about, I'm sure, by everybody out there. Corey Perry has always had a reputation of being a person that, love him. Some people love him. Some people absolutely hate him. And for years, I've heard people say things about Corey Perry. They're just like, how much they hate him has been pretty shocking to me. Like, I thought it was pretty ironic that, that how much the guy was hated. And now, obviously.
You find that ironic? I thought that was known.
It was known, but it was, to me, it's rare that you hear a player like, if you were to ask me the three players that are hated the most by other people in the league, he would have been up there right away. Like,
well, there's a difference between being hated on the ice and hated in the locker room.
Right, but I think it was more hated just as a person. Like it wasn't always just on the ice. Obviously, he's hated on the ice because of what he does on the ice. He's a disturber, but there's a lot of different ways to approach this. One is, the whole thing of, the rumor world going crazy with this being, this is Connor Bedard's mother to like other.
Yeah, stories. I mean that was and we saw this when it first came out, and when you realize it came from Hockey Insider, that it's a load of bull crap. Right. So and plus, I was talking with another reporter, and I'm like, this is the same rehashed bullcrap rumor that was a few years ago. If you remember, there was stuff about Patrick Sharp and somebody else's. It's all crap. So
this has been going on forever.
There's always been these.
No, it is crap, and it's been going on.
Go ahead, Russ.
I was saying there's always been these kinds of things. That's right. But the only thing is if I'm a team, I don't touch Corey Perry.
Well,
with a 10-foot pole.
Well, okay, that's the interesting thing here. So obviously, and if you saw Kyle Davidson doing sort of verbal gymnastics in the media availability, they can't say anything. It's a human resources issue. You're never going to find out what exactly happened. I'm sure people in the league know, and that will determine whether Corey Perry will ever play in the NHL again. But I have a feeling if it's a one-time event and it's something that's not an ongoing thing, somebody's going to give him a chance because because even at his advanced age, he's been a difference maker, and he's going to come cheap. He's probably going to come at veteran minimum. I mean, and this is a league that, hey, Evander Kane got a job.
Yeah, but it's different. The kind of stuff that he's being accused for, and the kind of stuff Evander Kane is being accused for.
Right, and that's the thing. We don't know, and I'm not defending Corey Perry. We don't know exactly what he did, and I don't want to be put in the position of defending him, because if he did what is rumored to be out there, it's reprehensible. And Russ is right. If it's something that was a one-time event and a misunderstanding and whatever, we don't know. We know that Chicago basically has to be cleaner than Caesar's wife because of what happened over the last couple of years. So they have a no tolerance policy about what's going on, and they decided, okay, we can't take this. We have to cut ties with them. I get it. I understand it. They were in the right to do that. But now you've got teams out there that are desperate, that might have been interested in Corey Perry before he went to Chicago. They might still be interested. I don't rule it out of hand that there's a chance he gets a job.
Yes. I'll tell you why I rule it out of hand, and then we'll see what X says. I rule it out of hand because we haven't heard anything from Corey Perry or his lawyer or anybody. Nothing.
No, we heard from his agent.
Oh, we did finally? Okay.
His agent came out and said he was taking time away from the team. That was before.
That's it. So that's all he said. Just taking time away from the team.
Yeah.
That is not going to sit well, Mike, with other teams.
Well, that was before.
Not taking accountability. Hold on.
No, that was before. Well, that was before the decision was made.
Right, where's this a statement?
Right. No, I agree. And
That's a problem.
If he doesn't make a statement, now the thing is, this also could be a PA issue, because if he was terminated, and remember, the PA might get involved in this because he was making $4 million and he was terminated after a couple week investigation, and then they went out right after that and traded for a $4 million player in Anthony Beauvillier. So you could say they were motivated because they wanted to open the cap space, and they wanted, that will be something that the PA will bring up with the league. And
maybe not, because they haven't said anything.
That's the thing. They haven't.
They've got time to do it.
Now is to me a big thing. Like the fact that we haven't heard anything, one peep from the PA, and and the fact that they put Beauvillier in there. I mean, this is Chicago has plenty of cap space. That's not even an issue, right? So
but they have 30 days. I think they have 30 days to appeal. So there could be
it could be appealed, and we don't want to say innocent until proven guilty type situation, but it does. And and if I'm Perry, I'm not saying anything now either. Like I think you have to.
You have to come out with something, even if it just says, "Hey, I understand this. Right. It's not what you think." You have to put some sort of thing.
Yeah, like I'm cooperating with the team and everything like that.
Right.
That kind of stuff.
They have said nothing about this.
And the PA has said nothing, which I think is a big sign.
Other than he's taking time away. I'm telling you, teams are not going to like that. That's just my guess.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way in this day and age that he's going to get a job. I'm kind of with Russ on that one. I don't see it happening at all. So let's get into some rumors, because defense, the defense situation has just gotten even more complicated with the Giordano injury. Mike, we were talking about that beforehand. Giordano's out for a week. They're saying week to week. Mike's guess it's 6 weeks.
A broken finger is usually at least a month. I would say 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a doctor. I just play one on a podcast. But I would say, if it's a thumb, it could be longer. But usually, if it's a broken finger, that's something that they need to probably put a pin in it. I would say minimum is 4 weeks.
Right.
If it was a playoff, it might be less, but.
So where obviously we've got a team in Toronto that has to start winning games. They have to start. They have to get into the playoffs. They're still battling to get in the playoffs. The trade deadline is 2 months away, roughly, right? So.
Right. Well, this is the funny thing. It's like, and I will sort of out myself here just as a point of hilarity. I was watching that the Toronto Florida game on Tuesday, and Evan Rodriguez scores in the shootout, and the announcer Gordon Miller says, "Leave, Panthers win." And I was, I thought the game was over with, so I went upstairs and do a few things. And then I turned on Edmonton and Vegas and didn't think anything of it. And then the next morning, I find out that they waved off the goal, the Rodriguez goal, and then Noah Gregor scores in the shootout, and the Leafs win 2-1. They're 11-5-3, I believe. They're right now they're in a wild card spot. They're in a playoff spot. So, I mean, their defensive situation is not like ridiculously desperate as it was last year when they lost Riley and Brody, and they had Paul and Giordano as their top pairing. They had half the Marleys up there, but it is bad when you're playing, William Lagesson and Simon Benoit, and Connor Timmins just came back from an injury, and he's going to be playing 20 minutes a night. So I'm sure Brad Treliving is out there looking for a defenseman, but this is the time of year when. I'll use the expression that a hockey insider, not the hockey insider, but a hockey insider always says. When a team is trying to help you out, they're not throwing you a life preserver. They're throwing you an anvil. And, a team right now, we'll offer you this defenseman, but we want a first-round pick. No. I mean, the Leafs might be able to get through the next month with a depleted blue line.
Right.
Now, if they fall behind, then they might get more desperate. They're supposedly in on Zadorov, but Calgary apparently is going to hold on to him probably until closer to the deadline. There are other defensemen out there. The interesting name out there, Russ, and he's supposedly coming back within the next couple weeks, is Ethan Bear, who's a UFA.
I think the ship has sailed for me and Ethan Bear.
Well, I mean, they're in a desperate
2-3 years ago, sure. Now
they're in a desperate situation, and he's a UFA. You won't have to give up anything, and they might have cap space because of the Klingberg thing. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying Rachel Dory.
If you want to get Ethan Bear for 2 weeks, fine.
There's a lot of teams
for the rest of the year.
My point here is there's a lot of teams out there looking for defensemen right now. This is not
right.
difficult. And if Boston's very hot on defensemen right now, they're trying to find a defenseman.
But you're talking about a different level of defenseman. Boston's probably looking for a bottom pairing veteran type guy, whereas Toronto's looking for a top four.
Boston's been talking to Calgary about Noah Hannafin, so I think he's a top four. And I think that I believe Hannafin. I mean, the Calgary Flames have 3 defensemen out there right now, that are on the market.
Right.
And they have Hannafin, they have Tanev, and they have
Zadorov.
Right. A lot of this is a really heavy. Like when I'm working on the rumor chart right now, it's a heavy defensive lopsided amount of players. There've been more defensemen, more top quality defensemen than usual, and less top quality forwards than usual. So
I'll give you 2 more names that we'll probably hear about a lot between now and the deadline. One is Matt Dumba, who signed a 1-year deal with Arizona. Apparently the Leafs were in on him before they signed Klingberg because he was asking for over $5 million and they really couldn't afford that, and he wanted multi-years, and he ended up taking a 1-year deal with Arizona. He's not putting up big numbers with Arizona, so the Matt Dumba of a few years ago may be in the past, but I think he's still
he's a good pickup.
You're still going to be giving up 2 draft picks for him.
The top prospect. Yeah,
I wouldn't look at all of what Matt Dumba's done in Arizona. I think that
no, I wouldn't either. I think he's going to be like the top guy out there. And the Hannafin thing, I'll believe it when I see it. I know he's going to go somewhere eventually. I don't think he's staying.
I mean, obviously, Boston and Hannafin have been tied together forever, obviously, for obvious reasons, right?
So, I mean, they blew up a whole draft, not intentionally because of it. But whether they get him or not, and maybe that puts somebody else out in the market. If they do, that's fine. It's a tough time of the year to get anybody. And that's why even Zadorov, I think Calgary, even though they said, like Mike said, they made him available, they're not at the point where they're willing to put up the white flag yet either. So
they made him available, but they want top end return. And they're, we got to remember, I mean, I think I like Zadorov as a player. I like what he brings. He's probably on a good team. He's a bottom pairing. He's probably a 5.
Right.
But he's playing in the second pairing, I believe, and Flamester can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he's playing in the second pairing with Calgary, and he'd probably play second pairing with Toronto because they're so desperate right now. But he's not really great offensively, even though he scored 14 goals last year. He's a big, tough defenseman. He's slow. So there's limit, there are things about him that are positives, and there are things about him that are negatives. And that's why, I think a team out there wouldn't mind trading a 2nd round pick for him. But right now, Calgary's in a position where they can demand more than that. And I don't think a lot of teams are willing to trade what Calgary is looking to get for Zadorov.
I mean, it is tough for Calgary to be in a position of trading 3 defensemen at the same time, because that puts them in a weird spot. Because how are you going to, when you do that, that's a really logistical nightmare. GMs don't like that because they go to basically say, okay, Boston, so they want too much for Hannafin. All right, well, we'll go to Tanev, whatever. That kind of thing is not what a team like Calgary wants other people to be doing. They want to be able to keep that solid. I'll let you mind.
Let me just add one thing, and again, Flamester can correct me if I'm wrong. Calgary, because of their issues over the last couple of years, they don't want simply trades where they're getting futures. They want hockey trades. They want players back. They want defensemen to replace Tanev and Zadorov and Hannafin. That's going to make it tough. Now, that might be easier with teams have to move salary out to bring salary in, but hockey trades, as we've seen over the last couple of years, are tougher to make.
I think they are being made. Go ahead, Russ.
The elephant in the room here, Eck, is the Flyers could conceivably trade up to 3 defensemen.
I know.
But they have a coach that there's no way, if you tell him they're going to trade a defenseman right now, that he's going to be on board with that.
Well,
so they may wait until 2 weeks before the deadline to make any of these guys available, even though teams are going to try and get players before then, and they may end up passing on deals.
Well, I'll ask a question here. Who the hell is the general manager in Philadelphia? If it's Danny Briere, he trades who he wants to friggin' trade.
Yeah. Okay, Mike.
No,
Well,
I mean,
no. If he's not, then
Listen, you can say that, and it's very easy for you to say that sitting there. But when you know who your coach is, and you know that it's John Tortorella, you know that there's going to be many discussions before any of that goes on.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, Tortorella knows. I mean, I do think Briere is the general manager, and I do think he will trade whoever he wants to. But at the same time, I was right that you have a situation where, the coach there is definitely a guy who has input. Like a lot of input.
He has a lot of input.
Not as much as maybe he has in other situations he's been with, but it is because he's not on a winning team. He's got some input here, for sure. Let me give you my defenseman list that I have so far that I put together.
Okay.
So some of the guys that I'm tracking. So Hanifin, like Tanev, Zadorov, we talked about those three. I mean, obviously one of the guys you're talking about, Russ, Sean Walker, who was really
Sean Walker, yeah.
Whose stock is rising pretty well because he's playing very well. And the Flyers will definitely be moving him at some point. I would think.
I would think so.
They might have to wait until, like you said, they might be waiting.
These are all rentals.
Yes.
Ilya Lyubushkin out of Calgary, out of Anaheim.
I mean,
he's a good one. Also,
the reason for him, right-handed, he's a rental. Salary is under $3 million. So I mean, there might be a team, and he was
most of these guys are all under $3 million.
Right.
Yeah, they're all pretty reasonable. I mean, Boquist and Peak have in Columbus.
Peak's been on the trade market since the beginning of the season.
Yeah,
he has been. But both those guys are definitely guys you can look towards. Dumba, like you said, Kakinen out of in San Jose is another one, that some people have talked about.
For teams that are looking for a goalie, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, he's a goalie, right? I'm like, I switched my goalie list. It's okay. Sealer and Philly, I was like, you're talking about Sealer and Philly.
Even though I think if Torts is still the coach, he's going to push to get him re-signed. But Sealer should be on the list.
Yeah, right. And Sanheim in Philly. So, and he's still.
I don't think it'll be Sanheim. I think it'll be Mark Stahl. I think they're gonna. I don't think even with this year, however it turns out, and it's going better than it and we could have imagined for Sanheim. I still don't think a team's taking that contract. That's the problem too.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because he does have his guys out there that really like him. Like Sanheim has people around the league that really do like him. It's possible if you get some team that really needs defensemen hooks up with one of the GMs that really likes him, and then it could happen, I think. But it's a relatively strong defensive market as of now.
It's deep. It's deep, but it's not strong. It's deep.
It's deep in what the kind of, and you're not going to get a number one or number two defenseman at the trade deadline ever.
No. I mean, the closest you're going to get is Hanifin, and you're going to have to pay through the nose to get it.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I mean, you're gonna have to give up, and people are very nervous to give up first round draft picks. So I do think you're going to see more hockey trades. I think a lot of hockey trades, especially given the salary cap situation next year. It's really a tough situation for right now for GMs to know what exactly they can do, and I think this is going to wait a while. But you have to look at the teams that are fighting for playoff spots. Like Boston can wait a while. They don't have to make this deal right now.
Yeah, Boston can wait.
But they can have to wait. But New Jersey and Toronto, they need to do something. They need to do something.
Okay, don't get me wrong. I don't think the Toronto situation right now is fantastic. Obviously, because half their defense is hurt, but because they're not in a position like Ottawa or Buffalo is, where they're out of the playoffs, so they can. Basically strap down and play like they did last year when they were shorthanded with a lot of defensemen. And if they play like that, they can get through the next 3 or 4 weeks, get through after Christmas, and then the prices, because right now you're paying desperation prices, and that's something that Treliving doesn't want to do. I think he's going to weather the storm with the Maxime Lajoie and Lagassons and Benoits and try to get through the next few weeks. If they lose another defenseman, then they're in deep trouble, and then they're probably going to have to make a trade.
Yeah, I mean, another thing we're going to be looking at, and this is forwards, but is Sean Monahan. He's going to be an interesting one to follow because he's picked up his game again.
His values dropped tremendously, though.
He's not the same player he was in Calgary, Russ. But they will for teams looking for center depth. He could be a third line center for some team
on a good team.
Yeah.
I know. Obviously, Elias Lindholm is going to be a big trade deadline.
I don't know if they're going to trade him. That's the funny thing. I don't know. Does he have a no trade?
I'll check. I don't think
I could see him pulling a Matt Sundin. It just seems like there's a possibility of this happening.
Yeah, that'll engender great feeling in Calgary.
Don't you get that feeling?
It's possible. I'm looking right now to see here.
He doesn't have any trade protection.
Yep, nothing. So he can go in.
He will get traded then. Okay.
Yeah. He's $4.85 million. Which is manageable for what you're getting out of him. That's a good number.
See him wearing a spoked wheel on his jersey.
Yeah, I mean, hey.
No, I don't think they're going to give up big assets to do it. I don't think they'll do it.
I mean, you don't think Boston would?
I think Boston has the least of the assets to give up. They'll give them up.
Yeah.
It depends on if Don Sweeney's going to go all in like he did last year. I don't know if he's got,
I don't think he can. I don't think there's enough to even get Lindholm for that.
Well,
Edmonton go for Lindholm. I heard a rumor about Edmonton looking at Lindholm.
I can see that.
Calgary trading with Edmonton.
I know. Well, dogs and cats living together. We're at the point, where we are, right? So. Yeah, but Lindholm would be a perfect fit for Edmonton. I think he would be a great addition to Edmonton.
Colorado
makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But Colorado's got their own problem. Like I brought up the other day, Ek, they're overusing Alexander Georgiev to the point where I think he's played the most minutes of any goalie in the league. I'm pretty sure of that. Yeah. And I think he's a number one, but he's never played on a schedule like this, and I just think they're looking for trouble with that. So they're going to have to get a goalie, I think.
Well, they've played Prosvetov a whole 3 games,
right?
So which they played. Georgiev has made the most starts in the league. He's got the most wins, but his save percentage is under 900. So obviously, that workload is hurting him a bit. So yeah.
Oh,
for sure. Trying to see what else I have on my list here.
Well, okay, you have to look at the teams that I think are. I mean, obviously, the teams at the top of the league, like Boston and the Rangers in the East, are probably going to want to add something before the deadline, but they have limited cap space. Honestly, I think the Carolina situation in goal. With Freddie likely out of the picture for the rest of the year with his situation. I
don't think he's coming back.
I don't think he's coming back. And Ronta, Ronta has consistently been injury prone throughout his career, which would leave him with Kochekov as the only goalie. And there have been questions about the confidence that Broad Brindamore has to the point that they were going to bring in Yaroslav Halak.
I mean, he played great last game, so.
No, I think he's a good young prospect, but it's a question of the belief in that team. Now, talk about another defenseman, Ek, who could be a trade candidate is Brett Pesce. Now the question is, that might be a deal where a team is willing to make a hockey deal who's looking for a defenseman, and if they have a goaltender. There's a potential hockey deal because I think Carolina. I mean, I would hope that Don Waddell is under the realization that he's not going to win a Stanley Cup unless he gets a goaltender that they can depend on. They have not gone down.
I saw Don the other day. I didn't ask him that. I did actually see him. I don't know, Mike. I don't think they think that way.
Well, they're wrong, but okay. I mean, if they want
that way.
If they want to stick with that belief, then they're free to do so.
I don't think it's a guarantee Pesce goes. They may just go ride it out with him.
Maybe.
Yeah. I do have the Columbus has called Johnson back up from the Myers.
I mean, they had to. I mean, he was one of the best players in the AHL for a short amount of time, like the 8 or 9 games. It was just ridiculous.
5 goals and 10 assists in 10 games, I think it was.
Yeah. I mean, it's just ridiculous. They banished him there.
But let's talk about Columbus for a second because that situation, you have Pascal Vincent coming in and replacing Mike Babcock when Babcock was fired. And clearly from what has gone on in terms of them being, I think, over the top, sending Kent Johnson down to the Lake Erie Monsters and benching Patrick Laine, that Pascal Vincent is trying to be Mike Babcock without being Mike Babcock. He's trying to be the tough cop. And it's not working because that team right now has dramatically been disappointing. They're not getting great performance out of Merzlikins. They're not getting a lot of consistent offense. We know that they upgraded their blue line with Severson and Provorov from the Flyers, along with Werenski coming back. They've been a real disappointment. I mean, right now they're at the bottom. They're in the bottom of the East with Ottawa and Buffalo. I mean, I can't see the big turnaround here for them to make the playoffs. So this is another failed year,
pick, man.
Yeah, another failed year for Jarmo, and I don't know how many more bad years Jarmo can have there before it comes back on him.
Yeah, no, I mean, it really
Something's going to change, whether it's Jarmo, whether it's John Davidson, something will change.
I mean, injuries have been so brutal the last couple of seasons for him. That's where he's getting.
Yeah, but they're a fan base, Zach. You know this, and I know it. They have to stay active in the trade market, and otherwise, our fans will stop showing up there.
Yeah, I mean, Severson is out right now. They've lost Roslovic, so they've lost two pretty key players, and they're just not getting great performances out of the guys that they do have. So, I mean, it may be a situation now where they not blow it out, but they need to maybe do some sort of paradigm shift with that team to bring in some, because I mean, you're locked in on Goudreau for another 6 years. You're locked in on Laine for, I think, 3 or 4 more. I don't know anybody, 3 more. I don't know anybody's taken Laine the way he's playing right now, making almost $9 million a year. He's radioactive in terms of the way he plays. But the thing is like you have to look at the teams right now that have been dramatic disappointments, and you have to wonder whether a shoe's going to drop. We saw what happened with Minnesota and them firing Dean Evison, and clearly Bill Guerin didn't want to do it, but he was so locked in on the cap situation and the long-term contracts that he signed that he had no other choice but to fire Evison in favor of John Hines. I mean, Edmonton was desperate to fire. They didn't want to fire Woodcroft, but they had to, and now they've sort of turned around a little bit under Knobloch, but they're ways away out of getting back into the playoff race. Now you have to think about what's going on in Ottawa, and is DJ Smith in trouble? Because they've disappointed. I mean,
he definitely is in trouble.
I don't think Don Granato is in trouble in Buffalo, but they realized that Devin Levi, it was not doing him a service to keep him up as the third goaltender. And gee, how many times over the summer and leading and through training camp did we say putting your number one goalie at 21 years old into the NHL?
It wasn't a good move.
It was just not a smart move, but they.
I hear a lot of talk with around the Sabres with Jake Allen, and I think that's something that I could see happening. I think the Sabres go for Jake Allen. I think he would be, if they went sooner than later. They can't wait till the trade deadline to make that move, though. They have to make it sooner than later.
I think they're going to give a run to Luukkonen. I don't get a feeling that a goaltending trade is in the future, because even though Allen, I think Allen is a UFA at the end.
He is. I think it could happen, Mike, if Luukkonen fails.
And no.
If Luukkonen had a run of 5 to 10 games, but if Luukkonen fails in December, and it's either a choice of making a trade or going back to Levi, then I think they make a trade, because I think there was no open-ended statement when it came to Kevin Adams it was open-ended in terms of, well, how long do they want Levi to stay down in Rochester? I think they want him to play. I still think they believe in him, but I think they want him to play and get experience, and that doesn't mean play down there for 2 weeks. But I think it's more likely that Allen goes to Edmonton. We know Edmonton's desperate, and they're apparently going to bring Campbell back, but we know that's not going to be a solution.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much more Edmonton has to give up to get Jake Allen. I don't know if Montreal's going to want to do that.
Dylan Holloway?
Yeah, I don't think they will. I just, because they know Ken Holland's gone after this year, And so I don't think they're going to give up any potential prize prospects.
Broberg?
Know how much it's going to cost though. Like I don't think Jake Allen's going to be that expensive. He is a UFA.
I think it cost them one of their prospects and a draft pick.
Yeah, and I think if it's the wrong draft pick prospect, rather, they can't do it. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, for sure. I don't know. Again, Edmonton's won just a few games lately, so I can't say they're back in it either. So
I mean, nobody's going to do Edmonton any favors, and it's like you're they're not trading Evan Bouchard, obviously. Broberg is somebody I think they would trade.
I don't know. I mean, you would think they'd want to, but he has no value as a defenseman right now. Zero.
Well, he might have value as a defenseman to a team that is right now, Montreal is not going to make the playoffs for a couple of years. So would they be interested in a 21-year-old defenseman who's got 22-year-old defenseman who's got some offensive ability? I think they might, but
if I was the GM, I'd have no interest.
Well, yeah, but we're talking about Ken. We're talking about.
But again, all these GMs, all these same GMs, most of them were at the same draft I was, where he was drafted, and knew he was going to go down this road and maybe not even become a decent defenseman, so that he could play defense all the time. And if he can't, why the hell would you want him in a big trade? Like, no.
Yeah, I mean,
that's going to kind of surprise you guys, I think. Okay, so the team in the NHL right now who has spent the least time has spent the least time trailing per game. So, within a game, on the average, what team has spent the least time trailing in those games? It's like a 10-minute thing. Basically 10 minutes they've spent trailing so far.
Vegas.
Nope. This would be the New York Islanders, which is a crazy stat. I know. The Islanders, but Islanders fans will tell you that this is true, that they're in games, they've been blowing it. They're finding different ways to lose all the time.
So they're losing in overtime or in shootouts, is what you're saying.
Right, and they're losing in regulation too, but they're losing in late regulation. Or they're keeping it. I mean, the Islanders have been ahead or tied. Basically, it means they've been ahead or tied more than anybody else in the NHL.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's not surprising in the sense that they can't score. So, but they can play defense, so they keep the games close. But nothing has changed. I mean, it's ironic that the Islanders right now. Okay, what has changed? Nothing. They can't score. They play good defense, and Sorokin is one of the best goalies in the league. So does that mean they're going to sneak into the playoffs? Well, I think the East, there are more good teams in the East this year, so I don't know whether they're going to be able to sneak in. They're in a tough division, and teams that people thought were going to make the playoffs, like New Jersey, are on the outside looking in right now. So it's going to be tough for them. I you know me, how sour I've been on the Islanders. I don't think they're making the playoffs. Yeah. We'll see.
They have a better chance of making the playoffs than I thought they'd have when the season started. That's what I'll say about them. I know how much you love Gretzky, so I had a good Gretzky stat for you.
Uh-huh.
So you do really like this one.
I'm just dying to hear this one.
Yeah, so Gretzky in his career had more 4-point games than he had games.
I saw that stat. That is
enough. Oh, come on. You gotta say that's not.
No,
there's no one that comes close to that in history in NHL. No, I mean, that's not even a question.
It's extremely impressive. No doubt. I mean, but obviously the NHL was a different league back then when you had, he had 212 points the one year. You know, there were players that were in the 150s and 170s, like Lemieux. So it's a different league. I mean, not to say that. I mean, I'd be more impressed if he had 212 points now because it's a completely different league. Yeah. But
he would be in the 150 to 170 point range right now in the NHL easily. I think I don't know if you get to 200, but he would be there. Just based if he was playing in the league right now for sure. I thought that statistic was just to me, it was just kind of crazy. Like there's a lot of Gretzky stats, a lot of records that he holds that are nuts, but that one to me, because how many teams, how many players in the NHL have over 200 4-point games? First of all, to start to think about that, it's over 200 4-point games.
Nobody's.
I mean, does anybody have 100 4-point games in the NHL? I mean, I don't even know if Mario Lemieux can touch that. I don't think they can. I mean, that's just a crazy stat. So For those of you who didn't get a chance to watch him back in the day, catch an old video. I know Mike's not a Gretzky fan, but I'm not denying that Mike's not denying Gretzky.
Was he a great player? Yes. Was he the best player of all time? No. That's Bobby Orr.
You got Bobby for that, yeah. No, but I don't know. I mean, I think that there's some things.
Bobby Orr changed. Bobby Orr changed the game based on in a different way, but I think Orr changed the game in a more, I'll use the term again, paradigm shift than Gretzky did. The league was a scoring league, and Gretzky was the best scorer of all time. Orr Orr changed the way defensemen play, and he scored like a forward.
True. And he skated. He changed the way defensemen skated, I think, more than anything else. Like, one thing, if you go and watch old games where you can see, if you get a chance to see Bobby Orr play, you'll notice that he skates like players skate in the NHL now.
Right.
Versus, and everybody else skates differently. Like, there's a different kind of, like, just the way their strides are, they're different. Orr has the skating stride of players now. Paul Coffey did the same thing. Paul Coffey had a different kind of stride, which people have picked up on too.
And he skated like that with knees that were, today would be, he had the knee surgeries that he had were open procedures, were not like arthroscopic surgery. I mean, imagine modern technology with knee injuries that Bobby Orr had. His career, remember, he retired, I believe it was in 1977. So he was in the league for 10 or 11 years. His career might have been much longer had he played in a different era because of medical technology.
Oh, very, very much longer for sure. And and it's a shame. I mean, I've got a Bobby Orr pinball machine in the other room, which is really fun. That
the
pinball machine,
Blackhawk.
I know that's a Chicago Blackhawk, which is really funny. And that pinball machine, when my wife and I went up to see Kevin Allen get inducted in the Hall of Fame, we went up there and saw that Bobby Orr pinball machine. They have the same machine in the Hockey Hall of Fame. The Bobby Orr pinball machine behind glass. It's pretty funny because ours is not nearly in the shape that one is, but it's a great game. But Bobby Orr just missed it. He would be just successful today. Gretzky would be almost as prolific. I think it's hard to really say he wouldn't be.
Well, he wouldn't be as prolific because the players are better defensively now. There are more faster players. I think goaltenders are better. I think that he'd still be one of the high scorers in the league. Remember, he was not fast. He was elusive. He was not the fastest skater in the league.
Right, but he was always in the right place, and that's what was the whole thing with Gretzky was he was there before the puck was there, so he didn't have to be fast.
He had that innate ability. First of all, he avoided contact.
Yeah.
Second of all, he had the vision to see things 3 steps ahead.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all those things translate. You can be it's like sort of like Larry Bird. Larry Bird wasn't the fastest player, wasn't the strongest player, wasn't the tallest player. He just was the best shooter. And, he had all these innate things that made him great. Yeah.
I mean, I completely agree with that. And I'm starting to feel like, are you saying that Ovechkin's not going to get his record? I'm starting to feel that, I mean, I don't know.
I know he started off to a slow start, but I still think he's going to do it. I think he's going to stay around I think he's going to be like Miguel Cabrera. He's going to stay around until he gets the record.
Yeah. And some people are hard about that kind of thing. That's a terrible thing to do and all that stuff. But you got to remember that Gretzky had goals at the end of his career too. That's just so, like, I mean, sometimes you almost have to look at the goals in their prime, like versus the goals of their entire career. Because Gretzky hung around for a couple of years too. No question.
Yeah. If Ovechkin scores 20 goals this year, it'll take him an extra year. He will stay around and score. He may retire 1 goal after it, but he will stick around.
Yeah. Will he stay accountable the entire time? I would guess so, but I don't know. That's the big question. That's pretty much all the time we have for today, guys. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will be back again tomorrow, Friday.